What is the best marketing channel that you would suggest to young architects now?
To market themselves.
No, of course, their work.
Because now it has become to market myself. How do I market myself? We are getting into that thing called the herd mentality. See one peer architect, second peer, acha, he has kept a PR, let me also have. Maybe it helps.
How can a new architecture firm get published in magazines like A+D?
So I think if it's the documentation, whoever wants to send it across, do a proper documentation, as we said, precise, concise, focused, rather than random thoughts which are going. It's just a matter of putting in the right things and you send it to your communication skill, even if it is simple. I think you should not hesitate, but to know the content you're putting across, highlighting the features of your project. Let's be honest. For a publisher, it's a very genuine thing. They are not so concerned about what the profession is. They are concerned about what is the return that I'm going to get.
Got it.
I mean, that's becoming more ruthless to now, but in those days, it wasn't like that. Everybody used to come and say, oh, architecture A+D, it's like a Bible, it is this, it's that for students of architecture. And it was not so easy getting published in A+D.
But isn't it true that almost all these prestigious magazines are being bought by architects only? I mean, how many clients do we find reading A+D or Architecture Digest?
The clientele, why people want to get into these kind of magazines? Because in the market, as a person who is in the industry, I'm a developer. I want to gauge who are the good architects going around, let's say in Delhi. That's how it started, the trend, the magazines getting into the PRs and all that. I mean, that today's world, in fact, the egos of architects is so strong, wanting to see themselves everywhere. That's why you have this kind of PR ship.
Correct.
Otherwise, why would you want so much of PR?
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Insyd Converse. I am Architect Saumya Bansal, co-founder of Insyd, and today I have Architect Suneet Paul with me. She has been the former editor-in-chief of the A+D magazine, all architects know about, and he has authored 3 books, and 1 book is in progress. So we'll be talking to him about today what architecture journalism is, what is PR, what is content writing, and how has his experience been on the A+D. Hi, Suneet sir. A very warm welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Oh, thank you for inviting me, first of all, talking to people who are pursuing what they believe in. And I presume that you are really charged. Little that I saw talking to you prior to the session that we are having now. I'm just sharing across with everybody that it was a very good feeling. Absolutely. So thank you for inviting me. And it's always a pleasure sharing across ideas, thoughts, the good, bad, ugly about the profession and otherwise with the fraternity and everybody.
All right. So where are you speaking to me from today?
Well, I'm speaking from my study. Yeah.
I can see all of
Yes, a few little books here and there. They're all scattered around. And because reading always has been a passion for me, right from day one. In fact, that's what got me involved in the process of writing. Yeah.
Right.
And I think everybody should pursue that.
So then we'll start with the difference between architecture journalism and content writing in PR. So a lot of people in our industry use these 3 terms, architecture journalism, content writing, and PR alternatively. Can you help our listeners understand the difference between the 3?
Yeah, actually, if I understand it myself, I would definitely try to do that because this is all new age technology and vocabulary that is coming in.
Yeah.
Which actually has never been there in the process of architecture. The content writing and all. I think it's very good at one level that we have now different platforms who are talking about it. So, but let me just put a little effort to really try to define what architectural writing would be, how architectural journalism would be.
Yeah.
For me, I think architectural journalism, I never want to be using that terminology. I always prefer using architectural writing, as such.
Okay.
Yeah, but architectural journalism.
Similar to content writing.
No, you see, it does come in. Content writing is very much a part of it. But, as a person who is involved, architectural journalism, I think, is more generic. You see, anybody can be a participant to it. I look at it that probably even if you are reporting an event, an architectural event, or a
Yeah.
exhibition, or a seminar, or something of
Right.
that nature, that would be more related to what you would be talking about, or any generic writing, which is not sort of having an in-depth kind of an approach or an insight.
Yeah.
So architectural journalism is a very broad format, Whereas architectural writing, when you come in now, you talk about architectural writing, that obviously then I think you can't write architectural writing if you don't understand architecture. That's the basics. I mean, you
Hmm.
can write on design, but I think architecture goes one step further than what design is. Although the beauty is architecture, design, we always talk about them together.
Hmm.
At the same time, architecture is also supposed to be a fine art. You see that variation, how much is art and how much is technology and
Hmm.
science. Now that is always going to be a variant. You see,
Great. So basically, you have separated the criticism that comes with journalism, and you say that architectural journalism is basically reporting events, facts, and critical writing is a part of architectural writing, which you call architectural writing, right?
yes, I would put it like that. Yeah, and then there's another terminology you talked about as the PR.
PR,
Yeah,
yes,
the
PR,
public relations.
public
Yeah,
relations.
no, I think that becomes, you see, like everywhere in the world, we have public relations, whether you're a fashion and fashion design or you are everywhere related or a film person, you have a public relations. But that is what saddens me at times, that we as architects also now have come to that level of having public relations. We need to have that. I've never heard
Hmm.
a surgeon wanting to have a PR. Have you ever heard of it, by the way? Just a question. A surgeon
Not PR, I would say.
is wanting to talk about himself through an agency.
I don't think I have come across it personally, but I have seen hospital puts a lot of ads on the basis on the surgeons that they have.
Yeah. No, but that is one. But I very
It's a
you
different
want
thing.
public relations
Hmm.
to talk about.
That's actually pretty interesting. Why do we always keep comparing ourselves with surgeons and doctors? I do understand that we are in the welfare of society. We are a noble profession
No,
and
no, I'm just
still.
taking up. I sort of interjecting here. I didn't
Okay.
mean it as a noble profession. I didn't bring it
Okay.
like that. I would say as a lawyer or every profession is noble. What I really meant was as a professional. I
As
don't
a
mean it's
professional,
noble.
as any professional.
As
Yeah.
a professional, I
Yeah.
mean, I don't mean that it's out of the blue sanctified profession, nothing of the
Yeah.
kind.
But this is actually very interesting. I have seen so many architects and even so many guests on the podcast itself compare us with surgeons and with doctors. The thought process behind this is that we are building spaces that help people keep mentally fit, mentally well. But it's the same difference between painkillers and vitamins. It's as similar as that. How can we still compare ourselves with doctors? I'm not saying one is important, the other one is not. But a direct comparison might not be.
No, it's just that when you talk about the painkiller and the other one, it depends upon the potency of the medicine. The more
Yeah.
the potent, the more research it has to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anything that is researched then is more
Hmm.
professionally looked at. And so it's all about the potency that one has. How much of potency you have in architectural journalism, the
Hmm.
potency content differentiates the professions also.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it is in that context that we say, why do architects really have to have PR and sell themselves like that, public relations? Because to be very honest, this is a very new last decade, 2 decades. Why this question comes to my mind? I'm not saying it is wrong at all,
Please. Yeah.
but it's just a thought which comes to my mind that why, oh, why? Do we
Hmm.
really have to have a PR in this profession? 2 decades back, this profession never thought about it. Public relations in the magazine also, when I was there involved, we didn't have, it was a one-to-one rapport with the architects coming. They used to send across, we used to have a to and fro talking to them, documentation, good, bad, do this, do that. You see, but it was never that. It was only the recent times, that it was all through PR. But that's also because I also have noticed that because architects as such are not very good
I
doctors.
mean, we don't write, we don't record our thoughts. And I have met so many people who say that, I prefer to communicate through my drawings, through my design, rather than words. I mean, okay, communication is still good. It's still a good skill to have.
I agree. This needs to be stressed at right from the beginning process when you are in the
Yeah.
education process of architecture. I, in fact, always was doing it when I was teaching at that time. And still, when I am teaching here and there, I lay a great emphasis with my students. Please have the confidence. You see,
Yeah.
we say that architect, like any other profession, is a good architect if he's a rounded personality. So you've got to be a rounded personality. It's not only a thought process, and more so in
Yeah.
the 21st century. Today,
Yeah.
if you are a giver, you know how to put across things.
Hmm.
You can get away with murder, right, in the profession,
Right.
without that basic content. So,
Yeah.
greater reason, I think we architects have to stop flying horses and come down to earth, try to talk about.
That's so nicely put.
I think the time has come, because why I say that, it pains me to say that, but I
Yeah.
see it in our society, how architects are looked at. And but we talk about it if there is an opportunity further, society and architecture, you know.
We can always go back to the original series of questions.
All right, now that the thought is there, this came to my mind because, to be very honest, meeting people here, there, and talking to students, I actually find that the profession in society is not really looked at upon the way it should be, and that is very painful. Why have architects not been able to make a mark for themselves that respect,
Hmm.
you know?
Can you explain what do you think is the right way to look upon
The right way,
architecture?
I think, would be in terms of respect. When you talk about any particular building, the architect should normally be the person to say that, oh, so and so has built this. Like we say, Aurangzeb, Shahens, earlier I'm going to the monuments and all that. We talk
Hmm.
about who built it or what it was or why it was. There is a relationship that builders were able to make with the audience. In today's world, that is one aspect that I find, by and large, when they're communicating, there's not been too much, oh, we can do this. There's nothing very much that the architect is going to sort of contribute. I'm talking at general law. Second is also that is very painful for me to see that over a period of time, in the last few years, in fact, you find that whether you talk to the parents or you talk to the students, by and large, in schools
Hmm.
there, they are not inclined towards going towards architecture. And this is a proven fact that
Yeah.
we have
Yes.
shared serious concern with the academia people,
Yeah.
with the top heads who are there of the institutions. They are scratching their heads. What do we do to get
Yeah.
the basic input of 20 students or whatever also every year? Because it's on the
We
lower end.
But I think academia doesn't want to collaborate. I mean, we have been trying to reach so many colleges, so many places to just, talk, get them talking. We have so many ideas, and I'm pretty sure there are hundreds of people who have better ideas than us. And, industry is always open for collaboration with the academia, but it just doesn't happen.
I think we are still in that age. We haven't been able to evolve, let's put it like that. We are just
Yeah,
following the same set pattern of behavior, the same set of charts that were there. Look at our education curriculum, by and large, it's the same. But
yeah,
yet, when we are on a platform, we glorify it so much without really having that base. So I think at the moment,
exactly.
the foundations are quite hollow. And that is
Right.
why society sees through. Even a first year student is very intelligent nowadays. We may underestimate him, but he is very
Yes.
intelligent.
Very interesting.
So
Yes.
that frustration that comes in the second year, third year, when he sees around with other professions, that is another deterrent,
Yeah.
for the youth of today to look at it. Otherwise, it's such a marvelous, beautiful sort of a profession full of creativity, which is
Yeah.
every day sprouting from here and there. I mean, the more you delve into it, the more you feel so small because it's
Yeah.
so
Correct.
creative,
So creative.
and now with technology coming in, but we are not able to understand and bring that forward to the students. That is my little grouse that I have with my
Yeah.
fellow. We discuss this often.
Hmm.
I'm so when you were talking about that, maybe we can crib. I would like to crib about that.
Yeah.
I always believe that even if there is so much of negativity, there would be one positivity which would take it forward. So we have to look
Right.
for that one positivity even
Yeah.
here, where our bodies have to look and everybody has to contribute towards that.
Hmm.
In fact, I would take that one step extra. You have this such lovely, prestigious platform that you have started some time back and which is listened to also. You should get in more people from since this is a platform which the audience is more architects also. Get people from the general, have those kind of themes where you can involve the common person also to come
Yes.
and
Yes.
talk about his views, what he or she feels about architecture, and that rapport,
Can
and
I?
in an
Can
honest
I?
way, like you're talking so honestly that you are
Yeah.
making me also talk honestly and not talk the normal kind of, you know.
Yeah. So the entire idea of building inside is to simplify architecture
Hmm.
so that architects can talk to the common people.
That's it.
Right now, the biggest problem is we talk in architecture jargon and the client does not understand. People, architects prefer to communicate through drawings. They don't understand that the layman, the client is not able to understand their drawings and therefore the lack of communication. So, the entire idea behind Inside is to make architecture accessible to the masses. That's the whole intent.
No, absolutely. I think it's a very good core principle that you just mentioned. The foundation is not only to talk about architecture and the various themes because it's such a diverse profession. And it's not only the normal set patterns in architecture, the typologies we talk about
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
expertise that we talk about, it goes much beyond. When I just said it's a rounded personality that you have to evolve, it comes only after making yourself aware. But this profession also requires a lot of patience. And I think in today's world, the youth does not have patience.
Does not have patience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we want quick solutions, quick solutions here and there. And then if it doesn't work, okay, we're not inquisitive. That inquisitiveness has gone. You see,
It's
that
called.
if it doesn't work, how do I make it work?
Yeah.
See, and that's
Yeah.
what I was saying in the profession. You don't really need to have public relations and have this or that to sell because the professional was so chiseled that when he brought out a product of his as a product, as a design, you normally would say that, oh, well, yes, everything works, whether it's functionality, whether it was historical content, or it was, looking at there's so many other norms that are there, the criteria that is to be pursued. So I think the criteria also, and in today in the 21st century, being an architect is no easy task. There's so many issues going on, sustainability and climate change and developing country, which
Yeah.
almost wants to become developed tomorrow.
Yeah.
No, the way our projects are going on left, right, center, speed wise. So it's a very exciting moment for people who really want to pursue. See, opportunities are there, but I feel it's the patience that is really required and that the confidence levels of the students has to be revived and make them understand that architecture is something beyond that 2 plus 2 is 4, which normally is being taught. It is not 2 plus 2 is 4. And that is the
Yeah.
beauty of architecture. You can't quantify it.
Yeah.
If it was quantifiable, it would be a different profession. You see?
Yeah.
So it's very nice that you have this on your agenda of growth. That you are going to bring in more people. How do you involve a society
Yeah.
in this
Yeah.
profession that they don't shoo away, they don't run away, thinking
Yeah.
it's technical and we don't want to look at it also, let the architect do it and all. And yet at the same time, they have not too much of respect when you talk. You see,
Yeah.
I'm talking out of an experience that I've had actually dealing with the parents of students also in neighborhoods because I like to sort of interact with people, find out and travel here and there. So, and it's also a carriage of an architect how you carry yourself. If you have a belief in yourself, your carriage,
Yeah.
your body language is different.
Yes.
You see, and that's another thing because we lack confidence, we don't sell ourselves with that pride. We
Right.
are ready to compromise.
Yeah.
So this business of compromising every step, whether it is you're talking to a builder, for example, somebody is doing a builder's project, they rule the roost out, the builders. And but if you don't really know how to bring around sense in that project, what you feel should be being done, And so there, I think you are not, for whatever reasons, I think, we all make compromises. I mean, the
Right.
kind of compromises I also used to make being in
Hmm.
this profession of publishing. I know it. But at the same time, I think with the compromises, one also uh, tried to, as far as possible.
Hmm.
You see, at least there was an aim that you stick to the basics and not cross that line.
Right.
Compromising, we all have to compromise in today's world, which is all public relation oriented and economy related,
Hmm.
and we all know it.
Coming back to the original question, you said journalism should have criticism also, right? I mean, journalism should not only be you're reporting the facts, but okay, you said journalism is different, and you said architectural writing is the critical thinking part of it, and that you have to be an architect to do that. You have to understand architecture to do that. But PR, public relations, is something that is a new thing that have come up in the last 2 decades, probably. And it's basically a way to build relationships. How would you define PR for architects now?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I think it's becoming now. The definition of a
Huh.
PR is evolving with each day. How
Yeah.
people are, and more, I'm talking in the profession.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I see that brand building and basically putting out a nice image of yourself out there is what I think.
That's what pains me, that our architects' products, that they have to be sold. A brand has to be sold. You see, in the beginning, that's what I was saying. Do we really have to sell ourselves like that? It's not, when I was talking about a
Yeah,
position or something like that. You see,
yeah,
I mean, have we come to that level now that really we have to
need
sort of
that.
have a
Yeah.
crutch of somebody? And that too, unfortunately, because I think rather than being a positive thing, it
Hmm.
becomes derogatory. And I talk through experience because I used to deal with a lot of public relation people, and during the course of
That's why I brought you back to this question.
yes.
Yeah.
And so I come back there, and there's so much the public relation. Either you are equally a professional,
Hmm.
you have that background of the subject, you understand the subject, and then you know how to interpret it. You understand your client as a public relations
Hmm. Hmm.
firm. But there were a lot of public relation firms that Harvard staff also had to deal with, who didn't know
Hmm.
head or tail about the architect, what they were just standardized way of looking at it, talking about it. You see, so public relation also can be a wonderful in this profession. I'm saying, like every other profession, it can be very professionally approached, but you then
Hmm.
again have to spend time understanding your client, what he is, what it is, that rapport. You have to get, if first of all, if an architect has to get a public relation person, that means there
Hmm.
is something that he feels that he himself lacks. But then he should be able to communicate to the other person. Even if
Huh.
the other person
Exactly.
is
Yeah.
not wanting to, he should at least in his or her own language communicate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't misinterpret what I am,
What?
you
Yes.
know,
Yeah.
because a lot of times there is a kind of a misinterpretation of the
Huh.
project also which comes as a result of that. So there's a
Hmm.
new thing now. In fact, these bigger firms in architecture, I find that's why bad experiences with the public relation firms. They have an individual public relations architect. They have started having, which I
In house.
in house, acting as the go between, and that's where
Hmm.
content writing comes
Yeah.
into the picture. Well, at
Correct.
least if you are controlling something, you are sort of having a person who understands the
Hmm.
language of architecture.
Hmm.
You see, who understands the language of words also at the same time, who is at least interested, involved, has communication skills.
Hmm.
Writing is such a beautiful art. I mean, it's like designing a building, a structure.
Yeah.
You see,
Yeah.
and if you
Right.
really look at it seriously, content writing also can be very exciting. It's equally
Correct.
exciting, in fact.
Correct. Yeah.
You get involved in it and you have knowledge, because it's the confidence in you is going to come only through knowledge, only through
Yeah.
exposure.
Correct. That's always true.
Uh,
So, where would you place A plus D in the three of the categories that we discussed? Journalism, writing, or PR?
you see, and let me just talk about it as a former editor-in-chief
Editor
of
in chief. Yes.
the magazine. It was essentially, it started off as a journal,
Hmm.
once upon
It started
when
as.
it started.
So, basically, a directory of all the projects,
Yes,
right?
absolutely. I mean, very focused projects, and you had the best of the names who were actually themselves contributing in writing. You see,
Okay.
that was the kind of a passion that was there. At that
Okay.
time,
And
in the magazine,
it started back in which year?
that was the first End 84, that was the first issue that had come. Yeah.
Okay.
So that was how it was looked at as a journal, and there were people themselves writing and all. But times were very different at that time. There were hardly any magazines of architecture at that time. Not that there are
Yeah.
too many today,
It was.
if we really realistically look at it, magazines of today, you really can't call them architecture magazines, because there's a lot of quiche which is there,
Let's complete the talk for AD first.
Yes, you see, over a period of time, the magazine grew up as a journal. In fact, I'm surprised why is it called a journal today also? Because if you see, the journal is supposed to be, it has a lot of do's and don'ts. It has to be have a vetting. There are supposed to be advisors who actually sort of go through the content, etc. I mean, that is the true way of being a journal. It's a requirement, you know. But it was there at that time. But over a period, I would say, you see, there was a dilution for survival, which was there.
Okay.
But yet, I think even in the 2000 and all, stuck to its guns, was always, even if there was a 1% or 2% or 3% compromise, there were 10% new things that were brought in.
What were these compromises that you are talking about?
The compromises, compromises in terms of the publishers' kind of pressures, even at that time. Economics is always, you see, when let's be honest, for a publisher, it's a very genuine thing. I mean, they're not so concerned about what the profession is. They are concerned about, end of the day, what is the return that I'm going to get.
Got it.
I mean, that's becoming more ruthless. So now it is totally like that, what I said just now. But in those days, it wasn't like that. I was very fortunate, in fact, having publishers in the earlier segments who gave that free hand. Otherwise, I would have never been able to survive, to be honest.
When did you join A+D?
Around 1990, 96 or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, so there was no pressure. But you were given a free hand because the profession also wanted it.
Yeah.
But over a period of time, I have also noticed that you do succumb, we did play around with, I'm being honest, we did play around with our editorial content a little bit, keeping in mind the advertising world. A little bit, I would say 4%. And that was because of the pressure of our sales team. So, but it was not compromising on the content. Now, that's where I say that there's a limit to compromising. It never brought in the name, etc., or winding it, or as the word is nowadays, we'll give it a twist. You see, nowadays everybody says, all right, not to worry today, we'll give it a twist, which suits us, the content. That's what it is, But without giving any twist, living with the true content of the profession, the architecture. So that's how the process came up, went on and on. Now, if you ask me, I don't think it should really be called a journal. In fact, during the days when I was there, I also had brought up the point that why are we making a mockery of this? That we're calling it a journal and it's not a journal, and people get confused.
So what is it now?
It is still a journal.
No, but what do you think it should be called now?
Well, I think it's just a magazine. It's a design magazine. It's not even an architectural kind of a happening, but I wouldn't like to comment on the magazine right now because it has its pluses like any other magazine. But I only feel that the focus towards architecture, that definitely has reduced because the market is a different one now. And I don't blame anybody for it, but it's a reality of life. You pick up any magazine in the market today. In fact, that's why I said there is no architectural magazine in the market today.
Exactly. I mean, most of the magazines that I see focus on interior spaces.
Yeah. And the other thing, now that you talk about it, it is not the architecture, it is the individuals. So we are becoming brands.
Yes, it's more getting towards PR.
Yes. So it is a brand now. If you are seeing photographs of the architect rather than his project, you see, I mean, architects have become products now. So we have to sell ourselves like that. And that is why when you talk about it, that why is the prestige of the architect low now in society? I think these are great contributory issues. It's not only that you blame the academic institutions.
Yeah, obviously, it's one of the reasons.
It's primarily how architects are. You see how they carry themselves, what we were talking about earlier. And if I day in and day out in an architectural magazine see, anybody, I'm saying when I say I, as an outsider who doesn't belong to the profession, it gives me a very different perception. When I see a building, at least I relate to design. But when I see a human, then I relate more to fashion design. Because my psyche as an individual, today's
Yeah.
world, fashion design, on the covers, etc., etc., you have models.
Yeah.
Who are Indian architecture is evolving diversely.
Mm.
We have got into modeling also now. So that's nice.
Yeah.
This is how you evolve.
The whole point is that it becomes confusing for the reader.
Yeah, absolutely. Are we looking at architecture? Are we looking at a model? What are we really wanting to see? People have shared that they sometimes don't even look at the magazine, even though it says design.
Yeah.
We have to understand the psyche of society. You can't change the DNA immediately. It may take time if it is for the better. This is debatable whether it is for the better or worse, but I think time will tell. Deterioration in perception of architecture in society, I think this is one of the causes.
I agree that it has become more towards PR side rather than, I mean, it's basically confused version. It's neither for the clients to understand how architecture looks like, what spaces looks like. Neither is it for the architects to understand, details about architecture. So basically, it's more of a confused version, and basically, it's a prize on the mental, right? Ki you have to achieve that. If you have achieved that, you have become the great architect or big architect.
Yeah.
It has basically become that. How does the subscriber base look like for A+D?
This is subscriber base because at its birth, it was meant to be an architectural magazine.
Yes.
So
So
it was,
basically, it was designed initially for architects.
yes, absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
It was never meant to be for the common man or for society. It was within the closed circle. And that is
Yeah.
why it was a journal. You see,
Yeah, exactly. Makes
otherwise
sense.
it'll never be a success. And why would an outsider, third
Yeah.
party, be interested in understanding the nuances of the profession?
Correct.
So they would like something generic.
Yes. Agreed.
So you see, most of the magazines are actually architectural journalism in a way now. And that is why the very definition when we say about journalism and the niche and about the very concept of architecture,
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
changing in the perception of the common man.
Hmm.
And not only the common man, sometimes when I get surprised, even in the, taking during the course of the period when the students come from training, their responses that why did you do this, why did it is because the client wanted it, so then we say but the client wanted it, and so did you talk to the client? No, but my architect boss did not want me. He said it's okay if he wants it, do it. I did not agree. So I'm just saying this small compromises even for the students when they go for their training. It just came to my mind how perceptions are eroding about the profession. If you don't speak what you feel, I'm afraid you will get it then. You see, if you're going to be trounced by A, tomorrow the so and so is going to come. Economics is always on the mind of everybody.
Yeah.
Look at,
That's such a powerful
just giving you a
statement.
political example, sorry, it's not at all
Yeah.
connected, but perception of America under the new regime to what it was, and I am not comparing regimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
This
Yeah.
regime today, American, is more money, save and do this. What are we getting out of it?
Correct.
What is the return for me? It's more of a deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yes.
the earlier regime was different. So this is the modern day way of looking at it, which is seeping in, unfortunately, into such professions, like architecture. So, whereas I think it's not to say that, we can survive on passion. No architect can survive on passion. He has to earn it.
No one can.
Yes, and no one can. Why should he? After slogging away for 5 years, if you are still
Yeah.
going to be treated with paltry amount by the professionals outside in the market, it's very unfortunate talking about it. That the average salary at times in some parts of our country are less than a driver's salary also.
Yes.
You know,
And it has been for very long.
and I have heard people talking one to one. Yes, we all have agreed that it's too bad. But at the grassroots ground level, nothing changes.
Yeah.
So
So low fees directly affects the quality of the project also.
it has to.
It has to.
And it has to, as a young intern or a young architect, when you are given a paltry amount, When the
Yeah.
intern is hardly given anything. As a fresh graduate also,
Right.
we
This is actually a personal experience with me also,
really.
right? So when I started working independently,
Hmm.
I was offered very less amount of fee, right? So I would produce hundreds of drawings. So my father suggested me, कि if the client does not want 50% or 70% of it, why can't you produce just 30% drawings and be away with it, right?
Hmm.
I used to tell him, no, this is my quality of work. I can't deteriorate because I'm getting paid less. But eventually, how long can you drag it? You have to eventually give it up, right? I mean, yeah, that's sad reality. Everyone does that.
A total in agreement, and that's what we were talking earlier. That you have to survive, and when you compare with the other professions, I think they're slightly better off. But that's
Hmm.
the unfortunate happening that on a platform, majority of people would be talking a different language, but the grassroots level, day to day, I think because the contradiction comes in at the same time we sit and rightly so, we
Hmm.
say that please, for God's sake, don't start practicing architecture as soon as you
Yes.
sort of get your graduation.
Hmm.
Go into the field, there's lots to be learned. That is only level one. That's the first step. There are
Yes.
three, four steps, just as that's a 4-year course or a 3-year course or a 5-year course. Similarly, treat this also as a 3-year course or a 4-year course. Get some
Hmm.
training in the field and understand the differences between curriculum in the architecture and in the outside world, and you will get 20 times more chiseled in the thought process, in creativity, hands on, dirty your hands. The problem is that the frustration levels, which I find a lot of people have countered, that I can't just be working without getting, I have to survive.
Yeah.
So I just can't be working in any firm like that without getting paid. I just want to expose with passion and do this and do that.